The H. Scott Stereomaster 342. This is the amp my parents had as I was growing up. This amp's probably it's probably like early 70s or something like that. Actually a very good amp, sounded very good. Don't know how much power it has, I can figure that out in a bit. Doesn't function at all right now, so I took it home, took it to my place, took it from my parents' place and took it here to see if I can get it going. This is American made, very good amp, stood up to 30 years of abuse or more. I'm like 40 actually. H. Scott, Maynard, Massachusetts. Scotsman on the chassis. 90 watt max draw, so it can't be that powerful. Ceramic insets on the phono jacks, I like that. Real high quality build, everything's nice and sturdy and strong. Parts look pretty good inside. You can see it's very old technology though. Like big clunky PC boards. All nice big solid American parts. Looks like a pretty advanced tuner. Really well, nicely made amp. It's kind of neat. In the back panel they got these two circuit board layouts, but it's only for the IF strip and for the multiplex. Showing two separate boards. Nothing for the audio amp. And look how much this thing is actual tuner. When you get your tuner box, when you got your IF strip and you got your multiplex all laid out. Half this thing is tuner, which isn't too amazing, but let's see, some of the outputs built right in the back here. I see there's two big capacitors, so it's got to be a capacitor coupled output. Nice size transformer for something that's only got 30 volts. I'll have to look that up, see exactly what it does for rails. But I get no power at all, so and the fuse is good, so I probably have something really basic wrong, like a power switch or something. But even fussing around with the power switch, I can't get it to come on. Well, not as simple as I'd hoped. I had this back panel off to get at the power supply and the wires to the power switch and all that, and it turns out it actually is getting power. It's kind of curious because this green wire that goes to the lights is actually a filament winding off the transformer. Being as old as it is, a lot of transformers still had filament voltages for, in this case, just for lights. But there's nothing on this power. There's no power on the filament line. It's dead. It's are the lights. And this thing has no output, yet I get voltage on the power supply electrolytics. So it's kind of curious. I have to delve into this a little deeper. See if I can get some information on it. Might be a tall order. This thing is really old. I mean, even the transistors are socketed. And the output transistors, I believe they were Bendix or something like that. And I believe they're germanium, not silicon. So this is one old puppy. I don't know if these guys are silicon or germanium. I'll find out. They're probably silicon. They look like, these look like they could be germanium though. Can't really judge by the case so much, except that was a very popular case in the germanium days. Germanium. But it's kind of surprising to see transistors in sockets. You never see that anymore. That's something that went away real quick in the early days of transistors. This is really from the very first days of transistors. It's a quasi-comp output. I had one of these covers off. And I believe they're got a real short part number on them. I'll have to look that up. I'm going to have to look up some more information before I go much deeper. Well, back to the H.H. Scott 342. It turns out I couldn't find anything wrong electrically. I didn't think it was as simple as the switches being bad. And I had that curious thing of the AC winding on the the green filament winding being bad, which they use for the dial lights. Well, it turns out the filament light isn't bad. My antique Radio Shack meter that I used was bad. All I had to do was clean the contacts, which is kind of surprising because I really worked them over back and forth, and wiggled them around. I couldn't get this thing to make a peep. But as soon as I cleaned them up, and I went over them twice with just some spray clean. Anywho, that's all it took. She's working.
There were no horse alarms.
Nothing.
There was not the viper for the horse.
Even the FM works. I'm in an area with not much reception.
Way to start your day.
Make us your choice.
But it's working.
91.1 The Promise FM.
All that's left to do now is to buy some new dial lights for it, because it turns out the AC is working for the dial lights. So all the bulbs are burned out. But for something that was built in 1966 and bought in 1967, I looked up the details of all that. It's pretty remarkable that it all works. I'm not going to do the caps or anything else to it. This is just a basement. It's going to be a freebie repair for my parents. It's just their basement stereo. It's been derated to that duty. And it didn't work at all, so I just wanted to get it working. Maybe someday I'll revisit it and put new output caps in it, and new power supply caps. It'd be really a nice piece to really rebuild totally, put more modern transistors in, maybe some 5210s or something instead of the old transistors it has in it. But and then maybe some better outputs and maybe some better caps, and really, if I wanted to get into it, I'd replace all these carbon composition resistors. That's one big ass job, though. But look at the FM section to this thing. This thing is really, really well built. Good old American technology. One of the last ones built in America. The outputs are silicon, by the way. I was speculating they might be germanium. Then I looked I got a partial schematic anyway, and I found out they're NPN, so I presume they're silicon. Some of these early amps had germanium outputs. Germanium transistors came out before silicon, or at least in popularity. And a lot of times these early amps had output transistors that were germanium. And but not the case here. They're NPNs, so they're probably silicon. Germanium outputs tended to be PNPs, and in a quasi-comp amp like this, where they're both the same polarity, they would have used two PNPs if they were germanium. In being silicon, they'll use NPNs. NPNs were cheaper. Germanium transistors and diodes have less of a barrier. They only drop about 0.2 something instead of 0.5, 0.6 on the forward bias junctions. but they tend to have more leakage and more noise, and maybe a little less reliability for an output transistor. But they were very popular for a time. I had an old Ampex that had germanium outputs, and a lot of the Delco radios had one big high-powered germanium output transistor per channel. So anyway, she's working. I'm going to order some bulbs for it and close it up and give it back to them. This is going to be a freebie. Maybe someday I'll get around to rebuilding the whole thing, but I got too many projects waiting to tackle that right now. And it's all working, so that's it for now. So find me some Chinese electrolytic capacitors that'll survive for 45, 47, whatever, how many years it was. Not too likely. So a solder-free repair. The only thing I soldered was the old antenna I made for it when I was a kid, over 40 years ago. Soldered the connections I had just taped and twisted before and hot glued them. So I wonder if Nashville Electrolytics is still in business. Doubtful. It's kind of amazing they work though. I'm sure they're not quite up to spec, but hey, it doesn't hum. It's putting out. What more can you ask? I may check the bias yet, but it actually sounds like it's alright because low volumes it still sounds clean. Probably it. So a couple new bulbs, and maybe check the bias. Call this one done for now. My parents are in their 80s, so this may end up back in my lap eventually anyway. If it's even worth putting that much effort into repairing it. It's a nice old receiver though. A little classic. I'd love to have the time to replace all those electrolytics and put some metal film resistors in, and because it's still not going to make the specs of some of the newer amps. It had pretty good specs for its day though. Good bandwidth, 0.8 distortion specs, fully driven across the usable power bandwidth anyway. Well, it's not bad for, especially for its time. It's not even bad for now. Not great, but it's not bad. Exceptional for the time.